And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And when I broke the story of Megxit in January 2020, experts described it as a royal nightmare, even worse than the abdication crisis of 1936. But that's not where the parallels between Harry and Meghan and Edward and Wallis Simpson end. In fact, a fascinating new book, Traitor King, the scandalous exile of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, will have readers' jaws dropping as they learn how both couples rebuffed attempts to mend relations with the royals, tried to assert themselves as a Hollywood power couple, cut friends from their lives if they dared to speak out against them, and quibbled over financial payouts. So joining me tonight is its author, literary agent and biographer Andrew Lownie, who is here to give Meghan and Harry a warning from history about the perils of turning their back on the monarchy. And Andrew, it's absolutely fascinating because it's almost as if Harry and Meghan have no idea that they are replicating some of the catastrophic mistakes made by the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, which saw them royal outcasts and outcasts from society for the rest of their lives after the abdication.
Absolutely. I mean, you've mentioned some of the parallels, but I mean, we have examples with security, with the search for status. We have it with them suing various people, blaming their parents for their behaviour, falling out with brothers. You couldn't make it up. The parallels are so close.
And I guess what's fascinating is the power of these couples wanes, doesn't it, the longer they've left the royal family. So while Harry and Meghan might think the decisions they're making at the moment are sensible, actually we're not going to care about them as much in 5 and 10 and in 15 and 20 years' time when they're just bog standard celebrities, are we? So actually they're probably making a real mistake by not learning from the Duke and Duchess of Windsor.
Well, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor waited slightly longer before, for example, they published books. They waited longer before they gave...
And there was a tell-all book, though, wasn't there?
Yes, for both of them. And I think I've seen documents showing that was one of the reasons why the royal family really cut them off permanently. We had the woke agenda of Harry's replicated with Edward's espousal of pro-German views. But yeah, the royal family sort of totally froze out the Windsors until literally just before the Duke died in 1972. And I suspect that's what's in store for Harry and Meghan as well.
And it didn't lead to a happy life for the Duke of Windsor, did it? I mean, yes, he ended up with the American divorcee, the love of his life, and of course the parallels between Wallis Simpson and Meghan Markle are just so uncanny, let's be honest. So he got her, but he didn't end up happy, did he?
Well, I think he was happy to have her. He was absolutely besotted by her. And he was someone who in some ways needed a strong, dominant woman. He was quite a weak man himself. And I suspect that may be true of Harry as well. So I think in some ways, I mean, though it was a pretty empty and aimless life, I mean, he had plenty of money, he partied with cafe society, he'd had no responsibilities. So in some ways, I think he was happy. It was Wallis, I think, that was the one that was unhappy, because she was chained to this boy child, and she had to sort of keep him occupied. And it was not a marriage that she'd really ever wanted.
And reading some of your book, it was really fascinating to me, and I wasn't aware, actually, of quite how much the Windsors had to sell themselves as well, in a very similar way to what Harry and Meghan are doing now. So explain to me how they sold themselves on the night of the coronation.
Well, on the Queen's coronation, I mean, they actually went to a friend's house and watched on TV.
Because they weren't invited, of course.
They weren't invited. They weren't invited to, for example, Prince Philip's wedding with the Queen. But they charged for people to accompany to take photographs, and they did that. They went to parties and asked to be paid. They would vet guest lists. They were supporting brands like cutlery and clothing.
So it was the modern equivalent. Oh, sorry, it was their equivalent of signing a deal with Spotify or with Netflix to keep the money rolling in.
Yeah, I mean, they had plenty of money. There's no need for them really to do it. But they had lived a very lavish lifestyle. Most of the time they were sponging off people, but they had to put forward some things. And any opportunity to make money they would take.
What do you think Harry and Meghan could do differently to avoid some of the pitfalls experienced by the Duke and Duchess of Windsor?
Well, I mean, to keep quiet. I think if they...
That ain't going to happen. We've already had a damn statement from them earlier today on Afghanistan. They can't seem to shut up.
Well, I think that would be the only solution, and not to wash their dirty linen in public. And I think the problem that with Windsor was the same, that he was always upstaging his brother. He didn't go away quietly, and he felt that he had a role still when he didn't.
So you would say, don't write the book, Harry. Do not write this book. Because it's a tell-all. He's going to be dishing the dirt on the royal family, isn't he? There's no doubt about it.
I think it's a one-way. He's got, as you say, limited currency, and the trick at least is to try and play people along as you can. I think if you just shoot everything you've got immediately, you haven't got much left in the barrel.
Let me bring my superstar panel in now. Dawn Neeson is here. She's the former editor of the Daily Star, so she's obviously covered the royal family for many, many years. Tom Slater is the deputy editor of Spiked Online, and GBNews presenter Becca Hudson here too. Dawn, this is fascinating, isn't it? There are just so many parallels between the two couples.
It does sound fascinating. I can't wait to read the book now. As I said, incredible parallels. The general consensus seemed to be that Wallis was in charge in their relationship. Do you get the impression that Meghan is in charge in her relationship with Harry?
Yes, I think it's exactly the same. A weak man with a very strong, dominant woman, and a much cleverer woman than her husband. So, absolutely, the parallels are there.
Tom Slater, what do you make of it all?
No, I think it's really, really striking. I suppose what feels like a bit of a difference here is the fact that when Harry and Meghan left, it did kind of split opinion to a certain degree, maybe less so in the country, but certainly with the newspapers. Obviously, you know, there was still a lot of fawning really over them in relation to this. I guess my question for Andrew was, surely that's a big difference here, that, you know, in relation to what happened then and what happened now, there wasn't so much, at least in some quarters, support for what they were doing.
Well, I think that, you know, the opinion on each side of the Atlantic is very much the same as it was with the Windsors. You know, they're very unpopular here and very popular in the States. And that's one of the reasons why they spent half the time in the States. So I think it's, you know, it is history repeating itself again.
Becca Hudson, I can just imagine you sitting there bristling at all of this, getting absolutely furious at Andrew for these parallels. How dare you compare my beloved Harry and Meghan to these Nazi sympathisers? Go on, do your worst. What's your riposte?
Well, I do just wonder, do you think maybe that the way that Wallis's impact on the royal family, do you think it kind of, the parallels between her and Meghan, so they're both American, both divorcees, do you think that kind of coloured the way that Meghan was going to be viewed, and do you think it kind of, you know, she was never going to be given a fair chance because of the similarities, and we never really gave her a fair go, and actually we were pretty inhospitable to her?
I don't think that's right. I think there was terrific support for Meghan and the fact that she was going to change and modernise the monarchy, and that they were open to not just marrying people from their own exact backgrounds. So I think there was a great deal of sympathy for her, in a way that there really was never a great deal of sympathy for Wallis. She was always the person who'd stolen their king.
Yeah, and I mean, Becca, I have to pick you up on that. I just have to, because it's one of my absolute bugbears. You can't seriously say, you can't sit here and say that this entire country did, well, maybe let's leave Scotland out of it, because actually, you know, they're not necessarily as into a royal wedding. But in England, you can't say that the entire nation did not get behind Meghan when she entered the royal family. I say a lot of times that day, that wedding day between Harry and Meghan, was one of the most joyous days the country has experienced, actually, probably since the London 2012 Olympics. There were street parties, everyone was out, the media coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Like, where do you get this narrative from that somehow Meghan wasn't accepted? The only reason she became not accepted is when we saw through her behaviour and started to realise it was all about me. People within the royal family nicknamed her Meghan, and we learnt how vile she'd been to Kate and the Queen and loads of other people. So just explain to me where you get this narrative from that somehow we didn't accept Meghan, because I just think it's wrong.
Well, she had the straight out of Compton headline, didn't she, about where her mother lived. She had private correspondence with her father splashed across the pages of a Sunday newspaper.
After the wedding.
She tried to, I remember she wrote on some bananas a message to some sex workers, and that became a huge, faux pas. She was blamed for civil war in South America because she likes avocados. She wore dark nail polish at the British Fashion Awards, and that was high treason. She was scrutinised in a way that we didn't do with Kate Middleton, and not that it's fair. Not that it's...
Andrew, you've covered all of these royal women. We scrutinised Diana and Fergie and Sophie Wessex and even Kate in exactly the same way, did we not? Yeah.
But okay, so weighty Katie, I accept, but that was British snobbery that was always going to happen. But this woman did come in to try and revolution the royal family. Her background.
Well, how dare she? That wasn't her job. She came here to marry someone. We didn't want her to revolutionise the royal family.
At the have survived because they're able to reinvent, and in each iteration they broaden the pool. So
I would completely disagree with that. I would say the royal family have survived because they stick to traditions and they don't follow the ridiculous woke culture of someone like Meghan.
I agree, Dan. I'm always going to agree on that one, I'm afraid. And I have to say, Becca, that I was editing the paper at the time, and it was just, the wedding was great, and we supported Meghan. And I'm not a particular royalist. I hated the stuffiness of our royal family. I thought she was going to be a breath of fresh air, young, independent, feisty.
And then when she tried to be a breath of fresh air, we hated it. We couldn't bear the nail polish. We couldn't bear she was cupping. She was pregnant.
No one gave a damn about what nail polish she was wearing, Becca.
But we never saw that level of dismissive criticism of Kate.
I remember the headlines about Fergie at the time, and they were just as
terrible.
And I just think it was the hypocrisy that she then started lecturing us all with that turned us against her. I really wanted to like the woman, but now I'm just thinking it's too far.
Andrew Lownie, just finally to you, I'm fascinated by Wallis Simpson. Did we treat her unfairly?
I don't think so. She tried to break off the relationship with the Duke of Windsor, and in fact she was encouraged to do so. But he refused. He said he would commit suicide if she didn't marry him. She was, I would say, she only became a much more powerful figure later on, but there was certainly great concern in December 36 about her coming back and having some power. And that's why they were so keen to exile them and keep them out of Britain. And of course there was still this terrific tension between the Queen Mother and Wallis, in the way that there's really tension in this present generation.
Well, indeed. I mean, you'd say that tension was probably replicated by the tension between Kate and Meghan. Andrew Lownie, it's an absolutely fascinating book. Traitor King, The Scandalous Exile of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, released on Thursday. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Uncancelled. Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.